wants to provide us that license, permit, or other authorization. Temporary, they have to provide it. So each premises has to have a separate, requires a license. The exception to that is, for example, if you're a retailer or distributor and you want to do both adult use and medicinal cannabis activity, you can be on the same premises as long as it's the same activity and it's the same ownership. So that's the exception. So if you're a retailer, there's same ownership, you want to get a retailer A license, retailer M license, you can be on the same premises. We cannot issue a license that's within 600 feet of a school or daycare or youth center unless the local jurisdiction permits a lesser radius. And that's probably the one exception when the cities or county can be less restrictive. For all of our regulations that we go over today, those are the base for all licensees in the state of California. A city or county cannot be less restrictive, but they can be more restrictive. For the radius for the 600 feet for the school, that is the one exception where the jurisdiction can be less restrictive. We require a diagram for the Bureau. The diagram has to show all the entrances, exits, windows. It has to have all the dimensions. It has to have, each room has to be identified with what commercial cannabis activity will be conducted. And you also have to show where all of your cameras will be placed, because we do require for our licensees video surveillance. And I said earlier, you do have to have property owner approval, and it has to state in the lease that you are approved to do cannabis activity on that property. Each of our licensees is required to have a $5,000 bond payable to the state of California, so that's to cover the cost of any destruction of cannabis goods. And then all licensees have to enter events into the track and trace system. So once we get up and running with track and trace, it's going to track throughout the supply chain all the way to the retail sale. The owners will have to be fingerprinted in order when they apply for a license. And I'm not going to read all throughout, but for the most part, anybody with an aggregate interest of 20% or more is considered an owner and will have to be fingerprinted and do a background check. And we have to, or anybody who's a manager that has direct control over the business. It's also important to know somebody has to qualify for an owner. So if we have 10 people with a 10% interest and they don't meet the threshold of 20%, they're somehow going to have, somebody's going to have to be have the owner identified. Anybody with less than a 20% interest will have to be annual application. They will have to include their name, birth date, and a copy of their identification. This doesn't include, when we say financial interest, we're not considering a bank loan or somebody's invested. We are looking at people with that less than 20% interest. They have to identify themselves on the annual application. So I'm going to go through all the license types for the licenses that the Bureau will. Obviously, the big one is the distributor. The distributor license is the only license that can transport cannabis between licensees. And there's a difference between transport and delivery. When we talk about transport, we mean transporting cannabis between licensees, and delivery is what is done at the retail level to the consumer or patient. So for, as most of you know, when the earlier legislation had a transport license. That is no longer, that we don't have a transport license anymore. It is now a distributor. They're the ones who do the transportation between licensees. They are also required to arrange for the testing laboratory to come out and pull the random sample of every cannabis batch that they have in stock. And they do all the quality control. So they're going to check once they get that cannabis goods, it's passed testing, they're going to check to make sure that all the packaging and labeling is compliant before it goes on to the retailer. And they also are going to be storing cannabis goods. We did get a lot of feedback from people that we had a lot of folks that didn't want to do all the requirements of a distributor. They only wanted to transport cannabis. So we did create a license type. All three of us in statute, we do have the authority to create new license types. So we created a new license type called a distributor transport only. So this is a distributor that only wants to transport goods, and they can between cultivators, manufacturers, and distributors. They cannot transport to the retailer because it still needs to go through that full distributor to make sure all the quality control and the testing is completed. So this really helps people, especially smaller cultivators and manufacturers who were looking, if a cultivator wanted to get their product to a distributor or maybe a manufacturing to have it processed, they were going to have to hire a distributor to do that. Now they can apply and get a distributor transport license. Or you could have somebody that just wants to transport cannabis for other people and not do all the rest. So we do have that. The fees are scaled for that transport license based on the activity you're doing. So if you're only transporting your goods for yourself, it's a smaller fee. If you're doing it for others, the fee rises. And if you're doing all of the distributor functions, those are the higher fees. And so it's based on the activity and the amount of cannabis that you're handling. All of our distributors are going to have to create a shipping manifest. That manifest is going to have a lot of information. It's going to have an inventory of what's on the truck. It has to provide their route, the estimated time of departure, the time of arrival. It will have the cannabis business's license number on it. It'll have everything, we've outlined everything in our regulations that will have to be on that manifest. Not starting January 1st, but probably within the first quarter of the year, those manifests are going to be entered into the track and trace system. During the temporary licensing fee, probably for the first 4 months, the manifests are still going to have to be completed. They're going to have a hard copy in the truck with them, and they're also going to be emailing the Bureau with that manifest. So once track and trace gets up and running, that manifest will be available in there, and then we're trying to make sure that law enforcement is going to have access to track and trace to look at that manifest. These are some of the vehicle requirements. Anybody that's transporting cannabis has to be 21 or older, and only the licensee or the employee of that distributor can be in the truck while they're transporting. The retailer, formerly the dispensary, we have two types. We have one that's a storefront that's open to the public. They also have the ability to deliver. And then SB 94, when that was passed, they added a new license type, and that's the non-storefront retailer. So that is a retailer that does delivery only. They still have to have a brick and mortar premises, but it's not open to the public. So you can't have somebody that just says, I'm just going to do everything by internet and I don't have a brick and mortar store. They still have to, it's just not open to the public. The hours of operation in our regulation is 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. A local jurisdiction could be more restrictive, so they could say you have to close by 8 or 9, but they can't allow for you to be open till 11. All the cannabis goods that is sold to the public has to be in opaque exit packaging when it leaves the premises, and deliveries have to be to a physical address. They have to be conducted by employees, and the delivery vehicle itself cannot have more than $3,000 of cannabis goods, the retail value $3,000 at any one time. And then our retailers have to know where any of these delivery vehicles are at any time the Bureau requests. They need to know. So they're going to all have to have dedicated GPS in these delivery vehicles. Starting January 1, retailers are not going to be able to continue the current operation where they're packaging and labeling cannabis in the retail store. There is one exception to that, is that we know that when we license people on day one, a lot of them will already have loose flower in their inventory, and there may be loose flower at the distributor. We are going to let them for a 6-month period. Any cannabis that they have in inventory, they can continue to package and label it throughout that transition period. But once they deplete that, anything they purchase from the distributor is going to be prepackaged and labeled, and they're not going to be able to do that at the retail location. Our microbusinesses is they're allowed, a microbusiness can do 4 commercial cannabis activities under 1 license. So they can cultivate up to 10,000 square feet. They can manufacture non-volatile extractions. They can do infusion, packaging, or labeling of cannabis goods. They can do distribution, and they can do retailer. So they can do all 4 commercial cannabis activities. Our regulations specify, though, they have to do, in order to qualify as a microbusiness, you have to do 3 out of the 4 activities. And then the applicant, you can do all 4, or you just tell us which 3 you're going to do. You have to indicate what they are. You have to be in compliance with all 3 of our regulations depending on what activity you're going to do. And the local jurisdiction also has to approve each one of those activities. So and we get a lot of questions on this. The local jurisdiction doesn't have to have a microbusiness license. They don't have to refer to it as microbusiness, but if you're going to do cultivation, manufacture, and retail, for example, the locals would have to approve all 3 of those activities. So we couldn't issue an annual microbusiness for that jurisdiction if, let's say, they only allowed 1 of those activities. We get a lot of questions on the temporary cannabis event license. It's a very popular right now. It's a temporary event license for up to 4 days, and it can only be held on fairgrounds at this time, on state fairgrounds. So that's the only place where we'll issue that. So in order to qualify to get a temporary cannabis event, you first have to apply and get a license to be an event organizer. That is the one that I said we only have a paper application. It's not available on our online system, but we should have it by mid-January. Once you're an event organizer and you've been approved to be that, then each time you decide that you're going to have an event at a state fairground, then you're going to submit to the Bureau an event authorization, and that's going to be each and every time you're going to have to submit. It's like a 2-page application just telling us what the event is, the date of the event, how long of the duration, the hours, and then for each specific activity you do on the fairground event, that's going to be a separate approval. It does allow on-site sale and consumption. It has to be, it can only be for people 21 and older. And any sales that is performed at these events has to be by a retailer or a microbusiness that has been approved to do retail sales. You cannot have any alcohol or tobacco consumption on the premises of a temporary cannabis event, and that's in statute. One thing we get, though, if you have an event where there's not going to be sales of cannabis, there's not going to be consumption of cannabis, you wouldn't need this license. If people just want to get together at the fairgrounds and talk about their product, they could, and they wouldn't need this. This is mainly for consumption and sales. And then finally, we have our testing laboratories. If you look at the slide, our testing labs are going to have to conduct all of those tests. what happens with testing is that once it gets to the distributor from the cultivator or manufacturer, the distributor is going to contact the testing lab. They're going to send out a lab agent, and they're going to pick out the sample from each cannabis batch. That batch can be up to 50 pounds, and then the lab can transport it back to the laboratory, and they're going to do all the required testing. They are then going to produce a certificate of analysis for all of the tests that are required, and then the distributor is going to have to make sure that everything's passed testing before they can send it off to the retailer. All the testing done at this point is in final form. If it doesn't pass testing, they can qualify to, if they qualify to have it remediated, they can send it back to the cultivator, back to the manufacturer for remediation, but it has to go through testing all over again. After 2 remediations, if it doesn't pass, the product would have to be destroyed. We have done a lot of outreach to the testing laboratories because we know starting on January 1, we need to have enough testing labs to be testing the cannabis products. We have done a phased-in period for all these tests throughout 2018. So for each 4 months, you're going to see what's required. We have certain required tests on day 1 for 4 months. Then they have to add more required tests. So by the end of 2018, all of our licensed testing labs will be testing for all of this. And finally, our licensing fees are all outlined in our regulations. Our licensing fees have to cover the cost of our program for licensing and enforcement. We do require an application fee with each application of $1,000. That's consistent for the 3 of us. That is payable when you submit your application for the annual. You do not have to pay an application fee for the temporary, and there is no licensing fee for a temporary. That's supposed to make you really happy right now, see? So no application, no licensing fee for the temporary. For the annual, it's a $1,000 application fee at the time you submit, and then the licensing fee comes due when we say your license has been approved. So we'll send you an email saying you've been approved, and that at that time, in order to get your license certificate, you would have to then pay your licensing fee at that time. All of them are scaled based on the maximum dollar value of the license operation. So basically, it's scaled on the size of the business. So here's our contact information. We do have a call center. I've put that number up there. We also have our website. The Cannabis portal is also out there. The Cannabis portal is actually like a one-stop shop. If you're not sure where to go, because we give you a lot of information here, that has all 3 of our websites. It has all of our latest information, and then any other agency that is involved in any kind of the regulation of commercial cannabis in California, we have a link to their website. We have CHP, all the taxing authorities. So that Cannabis portal has a lot of information. And then we're all on social media. We do post a lot. And then if you're not on our listserv, anytime we have a new announcement, we do an email blast. So if you're not on that, I would encourage you to get on our listserv. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. That was very comprehensive, and there was a lot of information. Before we move to Richard Parrott, we do have time for some questions. We have maybe 10 minutes or so for questions. So if you have a question, we'll give you about a minute or so. You should actually come to the mic and ask your question of Lori. And I'm going to start off with the first question. When you talked about the temporary license, Lori, and it said that must have a copy of license, permit, or other authorization from the local jurisdiction. When you say other authorization, what does that mean, or what could that be?
So we've been very flexible on what we consider other authorization. We've left that up to the cities and counties to tell us what that other authorization. One thing we do request, though, you do have to, the city or county will need to be specific on what the authorization is for, if it's what type of commercial cannabis activity. And so we do need that kind of, any kind of affirmation that says that this applicant is approved to do that cannabis activity in your jurisdiction, and we don't care what it looks like.
Okay, thank you. So County Council and Community Development Agency hopefully heard that. Yes, because that issue came up just recently. All right, approach the mic, introduce yourself, say if you're representing anybody and who you are, and then ask your question.
Wow. If I can remember all that, I can ask my question. Velda Go, Faith Gardens. It is a retreat in wine country, and I know it's going to be live streaming. Are we going to get the slides?
You can.
Thank you. How do we get the slides?
Talk to Patricia Brooks on my staff.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, that was a quick question. All right. Next.
Our slides are also, my slides are available on the BCC website too right now. So.
Hi, my name is Lenice Martin. I'm one of the co-founders of the Hood Incubator. And I just recently got appointed to the Oakland Cannabis Regulatory Commission. My question is something about the community organizing work that we do in regards to events, in regards to, I guess, specifically on-site consumption, and what you just mentioned about the fairgrounds, state fairgrounds. What impact or no impact does private property have on not adhering to this?
Specifically for the temporary event license or just consumption in general?
For temporary event license, we have events, many events that are like half days.
So right now, the statute only allows for these kinds of events on state fairgrounds, or I think they say district agricultural facilities. It doesn't allow for it to happen at any other location. So in order to expand that, that would have to be a legislative change.
Okay, so in its regard, it doesn't matter. I'm sorry, it doesn't matter if it's no retail activity. If it's consumption too needs to have the legislation expand.
Yeah. So a retailer can do consumption. If a licensed retailer can have consumption on their premises, if it's allowed by the local jurisdiction. So that's the only thing in statute besides the special event permit that allows consumption. And so that's right now the only thing in statute, and that has to be has to be approved by the.
One last quick question is about enforcement. That's the question.
What about enforcement? So
let's say this was like, I'm going to, go ahead and continue community organizing and getting folks to come out to celebrate the plant and figure out how to, do this and not consider the you just said. I'm not saying I'm doing that. I'm just trying to understand. I'll of course talk to my general counsel.
So the Bureau, we have enforcement staff. So once we start issuing licenses starting January 1st, we're going to have to be making sure people are complying with the regulations. We're also going to be looking at the unregulated activity out there. So there will be a level of enforcement, but I think you're going to see for early on in 2018, it's going to be more of educating people, trying to bring people into the regulated market, and also making sure the licensees we are licensing understand what they have to comply with.
Okay. All right. So you snuck about 3 questions in there. All right. So come on up, Dale.
Dale Geringer with California Normal. Thanks. That was a great presentation. My question is, as you know, the current unlicensed medical cannabis dispensaries are legal under a clause in a law known as SB 420 that by statute is supposed to expire 1 year after the Bureau gives notice that it's accepting applications. Now, Am I correct in saying that you started application acceptance on December 14th? And if so, does that clause expire December 14th, 2018?
I believe it was a week, or I think it was like the 8th, but don't quote me, that we began accepting application. And you are correct at the time, whatever date that is, that would be the start of the 1-year clock.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Good morning. My name is Johnny Sage, and my question was back to the events. So you mentioned there's no consumption or sales, that you don't need the event license. But what if it's just a product showcase?
Yeah, depending on what you mean by product showcase, if there's nobody selling the product, there's no consumption of the product, then you wouldn't need one of these event permits.
So then therefore we wouldn't need a distributor to transport the product to the venue?
If you're going to have product there, and you would have to have somebody, you would have to have a distributor transport it at that point, because there's no, you can't transport it without.
True.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning. My name is David Silverman. It's a question regarding micro businesses. Can a micro business operate with a separate addendum or permit a volatile manufacturer, or do volatile manufacturing in any way, shape, or form?
No, in the statute, it's in the statute, so no, we can't change that either.
Okay. And then my other question is regarding retail. You had mentioned that loose cannabis that's in inventory can be packaged after or if it's in inventory prior to January 1st. What about loose bulk concentrate? Can that be packaged? If you have loose bulk concentrate from a white labeler and you're labeling it your own, can you package that after January 1st?
Yeah, our regulations are when we have our transition period, it's specific to loose flower only.
Okay.
There is some transition for products that aren't labeled or that aren't labeled to the regulations, but it doesn't address that situation right there.
So gray area, or
that would be something if we could maybe we can talk because I think this is something new that we were under the impression most of the packaging and labeling that was occurring at the retailers was a loose flower. This is something I haven't heard of, so
it's quite a large market.
That's the reason. Yeah. So I think that's something maybe we need to have a conversation with if you don't mind calling me, and then we can talk about it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Good morning. My name is Sharif El-Sisi. I'm part of the Alameda County stakeholders here. I have a few questions around taxation, specifically to start arm's length versus non-arm's length distributor transactions. If we are a retailer and we have a distributor license and they're just held under two different entities, that qualifies as an arm's length transaction?
That would be a question for the California Department of Tax and Fees. We don't, I know, sorry.
I've been trying to get answers out of them
Yeah,
about some of these real specific things.
Yeah. We need to get the taxing guys here, see?
Okay. Well, maybe after you can connect me with somebody who can
I absolutely
answer
can give you a contact person there.
Okay.
Yes.
Maybe one more question that you'd be able to answer. A lot of retailers are concerned that they can't do 100% discounts at the point of sale. Is there any rules barring discounts to go past the cost of a product, like a 99% discount?
Yeah, you for the most part, you can't give free cannabis, which is what would be the 100% discount. We did allow an exception in our regulations for medical patients that have, that can't afford to get it, that if you're a medical retailer, as long as they have their medical marijuana ID. But as long as you're not giving it away, you could do any discount you wanted as long as it wasn't 100%.
Okay, thank you.
We're probably going to have time for one more question at this time, but we will circle back to questions at the conclusion of all three speakers. So this will probably be the last question for the moment, but we'll get you, because the panelists will still be here. Sorry.
My name is Ann Kelson, and I'm a cannabis lawyer, and I actually have a question that's embedded within a question about delivery services. We've been told over and over that the one license type that works throughout the state is distribution, but just for a point of clarification, if you are doing non-storefront delivery services or just delivery services in general, are you limited to the local municipality in which you've received your local permit, or can you operate throughout other municipalities that permit delivery? I've been told over and over that delivery services can drive through other parts of the states where there are bans as long as they don't stop and make the delivery in an area where there's a ban, but it's not very clear if you get a local permit and also a state permit to conduct delivery services, to what extent or scope you can conduct it. And then I also just wanted to ask whether the Bureau would consider supporting some kind of effort for a nature of the work exception for on-duty meal breaks and rest breaks for distribution drivers and delivery service drivers in order to ensure the safety of the drivers and also to make things a little bit more practical.
So I'll start with your second one. I think that would be excellent for probably our public comment period when we do the final rulemaking for that. For the delivery part, so we're going to be looking at where that brick and mortar store is for the non-storefront delivery. So that local jurisdiction obviously has to approve delivery. And then any jurisdiction can decide for their jurisdiction whether or not they're going to ban delivery to folks in their area. It is our understanding, though, that if you're a delivery driver, that you can drive through that jurisdiction. But we would agree with you. It's a little vague in the statute.
With respect to a delivery service being able to deliver in other jurisdictions that have delivery service permits.
Correct.
And whether they need to get another permit for that municipality or not.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So, as I said, the panelists will be with us until noon, and we just wanted to have enough time to begin having everyone have a chance to make their presentations, and if there's time after that presentation, we'll have questions. But then I'll circle back, and we'll have an opportunity for any of you to ask questions of the entire panel, just as long as we conclude by noon. So our next speaker is Richard Parrott.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the County of Alameda and Supervisor Miley for having me here today. I'm Richard Parrott with the California Department of Food and Agriculture, and I'm the director of our CalCannabis Cultivation Licensing Division. So I'm going to give you an update and an overview on our program. Lori covered most of this, so I won't go through this slide in great detail, but this just gives you a picture of who does what with regard to the three agencies who are licensing the businesses involved in commercial cannabis activity. This is just a history of the regulations and how we got to today. So back in April of 2017, we did have draft medicinal regulations that were out there under the under MCRSA. And then in June is when the trailer bill was passed, and it merged the two laws. It repealed the medical laws and amended Prop 64 and created what we would call MAUCRSA, or the Act. So in October of 2017, we withdrew our the draft medicinal regulations, and we were working on the emergency regulations. We looked at all of the comments that came in from the draft medicinal regulations. We took what we could from that process to help craft the emergency regulations. November 16th, those were released. They were sent to Office of Administrative Law on November 27th. There was a short public comment period for the emergency regulations that closed on December 4th, and then on December, I believe it was December 7th, OAL approved those emergency regulations. And Lori had mentioned we needed those emergency regulations approved before we could start accepting applications. So for CDFA, we started taking applications for temporary licenses on Monday. Our system went live. Our applications for annual licenses are not available yet, but we hope to have that open and ready to take applications very soon. So this is how our emergency regulations are organized. They're organized by 7 different articles that start with definitions and go all the way through these various topics. We have regulations that touch on record keeping, track and trace, licensing, application requirements, and then inspections and enforcement. So these are key definitions when we're talking about the regulations for cultivators: canopy, indoor, outdoor, and mixed light. And the reason I bring these up is they'll be on this next slide that I'm going to show you that talk about our license types. So canopy under our regulations is the area in a cultivation site that will contain mature plants. And in our regulations, mature plants are plants that are flowering. And so that's the canopy. And your license is based on square footage or the size of the canopy. So once again, that's mature plants that are flowering. Indoor cultivation is cultivation within a permanent structure with the purely use of artificial light. Outdoor cultivation is outdoor with no use of artificial light whatsoever. And then mixed light cultivation is cultivation within a greenhouse, hoop house, or a hothouse using either light deprivation or artificial light. And for our mixed light licenses, we have two tiers, mixed light tier 1 and 2, and those are based on the wattage per square foot of the artificial light that's used. And those are all spelled out in our regulations as well. So this gives you a picture of the license categories, the types of licenses that we issue at CDFA. If you look across the top, it tells you the type of cultivation: outdoor, indoor, or mixed light. And then when you look down the left side, these are the categories of licenses that we issue, ranging from specialty cottage all the way down to processor. So within this grid, you can see the square footage. Once again, this is based on canopy. And these licenses are issued as either type A for adult use or M for medicinal. That's consistent with all of the licensing agencies. I'd like to note that the medium licenses, CDFA was directed in statute to limit those. So medium licenses are limited to one medium license, either type A or M. That's in our regulations. The large licenses are not issued until January 1st, 2023. That was prescribed in the statute. And I also like to note that processor license is a new license that was not originally in the statute that was created. We do have authority to create license types, and so the processor license was created through our regulatory process. You can see there that a processor can conduct only trimming, drying, curing, grading, or packaging of cannabis and non-manufactured cannabis products. I've been asked this at previous presentations. Does a cultivator need a separate processor license to process their own product? And no, they don't. Under that cultivation license, they can do their own processing. This processor license is if that owner is also doing processing for other businesses. Okay. So temporary licenses, Lori covered this at the beginning, so I won't go too far into this. The key thing here is what's in bold. In order to qualify for a temporary license with CDFA, you must have that local license, permit, or other authorization. The temporary licenses are going to be good for 120 days. They are of no cost, and they can be extended for 90-day periods. The key there is to qualify for the extension, you need to have submitted an application for an annual license. The statutory language for the temporary licenses does sunset on January 1st of 2019. So for the annual licenses, those will be valid for 1 year or 12 months from the date they're issued. The annual licenses do have an application and license fees, and I have some information in a couple slides to go over that with you. Proof of local authorization is not required with an application for an annual license. The annual licensees will be required to use the California Cannabis track and trace system, and that license does need to be renewed annually. So temporary licenses, this is in our regulations, temporary licensees will not be using the track and trace system in order to sell product to another licensee. The regulations clearly specify that they will need to provide a paper receipt, invoice, and manifest, and the regulations specify what must be contained on those documents. And I'll talk a little bit more about temporary licensees and annual licensees and track and trace in a little bit. So this is just to touch on the local authorization. Lori covered this. The difference in between the temporary and the annual. The temporary, you must provide that proof of local authorization. For the annual, you don't need to. Regardless, in either case, we will be notifying local jurisdictions in the event that that applicant voluntarily provides the proof of local authorization, and we notify the local jurisdictions. They have 10 days to respond. In the event that the applicant does not submit that on the annual license, we still notify the local jurisdictions and they have 60 days to respond. That's consistent with our regulations. So we do have non-refundable annual license application fees. These are specified in our regulation. This slide here shows you what those fees are. These fees are based on CDFA's current known program costs, and the fees are scaled based on the annual average production of these various license types. So once again, these are the application fees for the annual licenses. These are one-time non-refundable fees for applying for the license. And then these are the annual license fees. Once again, these are based on CDFA's current known program costs. And then these are also based on the annual, average annual production of the various license types. And I will note that these fees are to cover the cost of administering our licensing and enforcement program. These fees are not, CDFA does not generate revenue from these fees. It is purely to cover the cost of our program for licensing and enforcement. We will be conducting criminal background checks for the applicants for our annual licenses. Anyone with a criminal background may apply. They will be required to provide live scan fingerprints. All owners will be required to do that. Criminal convictions that are substantially related may prevent the issuance of a license, but the applicant can provide documentation to show evidence of rehabilitation. We will be handling those situations on a case-by-case basis as applications, the annual license applications, come into CDFA. Just a reminder for the site requirements, this is in statute too. No alcohol or tobacco sales are allowed on the premises where the cannabis license is held. So that's just something I like to remind everybody. For our applications, right now, like I said, we are taking applications for temporary licenses. We're able to take those either online or by paper. The online system is very easy to use. It's obviously a little bit quicker, but we do have paper out there for people who aren't able to use online or don't want to use the online application process. And it is, if you go to, that's our website there, if you go to our main page, right at the top is information about the temporary application process with a link to the system. We do have a compliance and enforcement branch within CDFA for this program. It's very small right now. We will be hiring new staff as we get into 2018. They'll be conducting field annual inspections at licensed cultivation sites. We will have field offices statewide. Right now, we're in the process of determining where best to locate those offices. I can tell you for sure that we will have one up in the Emerald Triangle. There was a provision in the law that requires an establishment of an office by July 1st of 2018 up in Northern California, and so we will be having an inspection team up in that area as well. Because we won't have enough staff to cover the entire state, we are looking at collaborating with other government agencies, local agricultural commissioners and their staff. We have some funding in 2018 to run some pilot projects with a few local jurisdictions and look at partnering up in resources to get assistance in conducting inspections. So we get asked too about what about suspected illegal activity. So local jurisdictions have the authority to take enforcement actions against illegal grow sites. We have this cannabis complaint hotline that's being established that we will be able to take calls if there is information that anyone wants to provide to us. We'll be referring those complaints to local jurisdictions, local law enforcement, anyone that we can, and CDFA will be participating as necessary, but we will have this complaint hotline available and be able to take those calls and handle those issues and refer them. So the track and trace system. As I said earlier, the temporary licensees won't be using the track and trace system. What will happen is when a temporary licensee applies for their annual license and they're notified by the licensing agency that their application for the annual license has been received, they will receive instructions advising them that they need to take the training for the track and trace system. It's a web-based system, and it is intended to track cannabis from seed to sale. We think it's very important to have the licensees trained to use this system. And because temporary licenses start on January 1st, 2018, that's why we're not requiring temporary licensees to use track and trace, because we need to get them trained first. So this is a transition period. The regulations are very specific on what's required on those paper documents and when they sell products during the temporary license period. All of the annual licensees are going to be required to use this system. You'll see this acronym a lot when you come across track and trace. CCTT is for the California Cannabis Track and Trace System. Metric is the platform that our vendor uses. They use this in Oregon, in Colorado, and I believe in Alaska. So to give you a little picture for cultivators for track and trace, every cultivators will be required to use unique identifiers for the cannabis plants. Cultivators will be able to have lots of, when I talked earlier about canopy is where your mature plants will be. So cultivators can have lots of immature plants that are outside of the canopy. That lot of immature plants needs to be a contiguous lot, and that lot will have one unique identifier that identifies that lot of up to 100 plants. And every plant within the lot will need to have a label affixed to the plant that matches that unique identifier. So everything will need to be tracked and accounted for. If any immature plants die off, the cultivator will need to track and account for that loss for when they move those plants to the canopy and they become mature plants. Every mature plant will need its own unique identifier that associates back to the unique identifier from that lot of plants where it came from. And then all of our licensees will be using this track and trace system. And like I said, it will be tracking the products from seed to sale. So we've also been asked, well, what information will be available when we issue licenses? There is a public search capability. Information that will be available will be the license number, the type of license issued, the legal business name, the county where the premises is located, the type of license, and the license status. So this is available out there now for the temporary licenses that are being issued. And then finally, here's information for CDFA. Our website's up at the top. Like I said, if you go out there and look, right at the top of our main page is information about the temporary license. We'll have information available when we're able to take annual applications. Like I said, we hope that's very soon. On our website, you can sign up if you haven't already for listserv notices. We send e-blasts out when we have new information. For instance, when we open up the system to take annual applications, we'll be sending an e-blast out about that. There's our 800 number, our 833 CalGrow. That number is available. We're taking calls if people have questions about the temporary license application process. We're able to help them there, or if they're having issues with the system, we'll help them troubleshoot with that. There's an email address in case you want to email us with questions. And then we're also very active on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And then that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parrott. So we do have time for questions of Mr. Parrott before we go to Dr. Mann. So if you'd like to ask a question, please approach the mic. I will start off with a question. In Alameda County, we have an agriculture commission, and on that commission, we've just recently designated another position for a commissioner who has expertise in cannabis to be on the commission. The question is cannabis considered a crop, a plant? And if not, why not?
So under this law, it is considered an agricultural product under under MALCRSA. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
First question.
Hello, my name is Stephen Cassidy. I wanted to ask you a question about the restriction of ownership for mixed light cultivators that are between 10,000 and 22,000 square feet. Could you please explain how that works, and specifically, can the same person hold both an A license and an M license for mixed light facilities that are above 10,000 square feet?
So let me see if I understand your question. Can the same owner hold both an A and M for which category?
For the mixed light 10,000 to 22,000 square feet.
So mixed light, so that's the medium license, right? That would be medium, mixed light. Those are limited to one, either type A or M.
So the answer is no?
That's correct, just one.
Okay. And then could one individual own multiple small licenses plus one mixed use, mixed light?
That's
license?
correct. So according to the regulations, and the statute did direct CDFA to limit the medium licenses, but there was no statutory requirement to limit the other types of licenses. So you're correct. They're limited to one medium, either type A or M, but there are no limits on the smaller or specialty licenses. They would just need to meet all of the requirements for that license when they make application.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Hi, Dr. Pam, Alameda County Pharmacists Association. Will the strength of the cannabis be listed so the consumer will know what they're getting?
We don't have any provisions in our regulations because the cultivators will be harvesting and then selling the product on to either a distributor or manufacturer. So I'm not sure if that's a provisional labeling requirement. So I may defer that one to.
Different plants have different strengths.
Right.
So if they buy it from one person, it might be twice as strong as if they bought it from another person. Are you protecting the consumer at all?
So, and I think the question you're asking is on the product at final retail sale. Yeah. So we at CDFA don't have requirements, but we're not regulating the final retail sale.
So there's a variety of labeling requirements which will include the THC content, among a lot of other labeling requirements for cannabis.
And I will go over that in my presentation. Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Hilary Sardinas, and I'm with Alameda County Resource Conservation District. My question is about the permitting process, so water quality permits. Are those required when they apply for the license, and will you be checking with them, or do they vary based on the different local jurisdictions?
So for the temporary license, there's minimal information that needs to be provided. But when we talk about the annual license, the applicant will need to provide information about water sources, and they'll need to provide several different certifications depending on where they're located and what type of license they're getting. They'll have to have a permit from Department of Fish and Wildlife for the lake or stream bed alteration. So they will be providing all that information to us.
That was my next question.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning, Corinne Smith with KPFA News. My question's about the licensing fees. Are counties also allowed to charge licensing fees? And are there any circumstances where those fees will be waived?
That's really a local jurisdiction question. Speaking from the state, I know that we charge fees to administer our program, but that's really a question for local jurisdictions.
And I can answer that affirmative, that Alameda County, we will be establishing fees. Our staff's going through a study presently, and that'll be coming to the Board of Supervisors in the near future. but we will be establishing fees. There might be provisions in the law that will allow our staff to waive those fees, but presently we don't have any fees, but we will be establishing fees.
Thank you for this panel. It's very informative. I want to find out what are the liabilities if you are just the landowner, if you are the landlord and not intimately involved in the business.
Yeah, that would be a very tough question for us to answer without having specifics. I mean,
Okay, let me give you an example. So if you own large tracts of land and if cannabis people want to lease your land, does the landowner need to get the permits, or does the landowner just need to make sure that the people that want to lease their land have the permits?
Yeah, for one, anybody that's leasing property from a landlord or a landowner, they would need to provide us with a copy of the lease, and the landowner has to specifically state that they're allowing this type of cannabis activity. But I think it would be prudent for them to also make sure that whoever they're leasing to has a not only a local authorization to conduct that activity, but also a state license.
Okay, so I understand. Thank you.
Good morning, Bob Butler, KCBS Radio. So I'm trying to get my head around this. So let's say I live in Oakland and I want to open up, I want to start selling marijuana. I want to grow and sell marijuana. How many licenses do I need and how much is it going to cost me?
So if you wanted to have a retail store in Oakland to sell cannabis, you would need to have some sort of authorization from the city of Oakland.
For which it would charge?
It depends. That will depend on each local jurisdiction.
Saying yes.
Yeah. And then you'll have to have a state license starting January 1st.
So just the two, not a CDFA license?
Well, I think it depends on what type of activity you're doing. So Lori talked about the micro business license. If you're doing cultivation, manufacturing, distribution, and retail, or if you're just doing cultivation, then if it's cultivation only, you would need the license from CDFA. If you're doing multiple activities, you could look at a micro business license. If you're just doing retail, you would need the retail license. So I think it depends on your business structure.
So if I grow it and sell it, I'll need licenses from City of Oakland, from CDFA, and from the state.
Yes, unless you could qualify for a micro business, then it would just be one license from the Bureau. So, but yes.
$1,000 each, right?
That's the application fee that to process the application, but there's also a licensing fee for each one of those license types.
It could get pretty expensive. Thank you.
And those are just the fees. Jurisdictions still have the ability to tax it as well. Okay, I think that's all the questions for the moment. And once again, we'll circle back to having concluding questions or comments. So right now I'd like to have Dr. MANN. He's going to make his presentation.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Miley, and organizing this. And I'm happy to be here. And you will notice in our three presentation a lot of consistency, but at the same time we will be talking about the same things. For example, my first slide is showing you progression of the cannabis law. And 1996, that was the Compassion Use Act, under which the medicinal use of cannabis was allowed in California. But 2015, 2016, and now we are here in 2017. That's where we have a medicinal and adult use, one set of regulation and law which we are implementing. So there has been a journey, about 20 years of journey coming to this point. We three licensing authorities, we have different responsibilities. We in public health will be licensing and regulating the manufacturers. I will go in more detail what the manufacturing means. And in public health, our main role is to ensure the public health and consumer safety. And to address those issues, we did have a regulation which we sent out on December 7th, actually, they were implemented. and we are receiving applications for both temporary and annual license. Our temporary license is a paper application. Our PDF form is available on our webpage. You can fill it and email it or mail it to us, or you drop it off. And then, of course, there's a compliance component to it. The cannabis manufacturer can be defined in 3 different categories. Extraction. Extraction means when you take a plant material, cannabis plant material, and you transform it in another form, maybe oil or concentrate or any other formulation, that will be extraction. Infusion would be that you take the oil or concentrate and you infuse various products, which could be edibles, could be capsules, suppositories, vape cartridge, or any other product which you are making, including topicals. Then packaging and labeling requirement is for the finished product which the manufacturer has made themselves and it is market ready. They need to package it, they need to label it before they can send it to a distributor. Principle of MOCASA is at the core of the law is the public health and consumer safety. That's where our role is in public health. The law also defines that the cannabis and cannabis product is neither a food nor a drug. That's why the local existing food and drug laws and regulations do not apply. That's why we have to write our own regulation for this unique product. And it does allow vertical integration, as Lori AJAX and Richard mentioned, but the testing lab is the exception. One can have multiple licenses, but testing lab has to stay independent, so there's no conflict of interest. It does ask for dual licensing, and dual licensing means that there's a local authorization and then there's a state requirements. State cannot issue a license to you unless you are in compliance with the locals, which would mean that you need to have a local license, permit, or any other authorization which the locals will give you. If you have not been working with the locals, I will encourage you to work with the locals so you can get your permission before you can apply to get license from the state. The state will be setting the baseline, as Lori AJAX said, and Richard, baseline regulation and requirements, but the locals can be more restrictive. There will be one exception, that was the premises radius from 600 feet to, they could be less restrictive. The regulations, there are 2 types of regulations, emergency regulations, which we published, and they are effective as of December 7th. And the emergency regulation is a vehicle which is very useful for us. In a short period of time, you can get approval and get set and start receiving application and start issuing licenses. Because the law required all 3 licensing agencies that we should start issuing license as of January 1, so we did not have time to go through a rule-making process, which is a 9-month or 12-month cycle. However, we will be publishing our permanent regulation early 2018, and there would be 45 days of comment period, and that will be a good opportunity for you to make comments, and we will receive those comments, we will review those comments, and if those comments warrant any change or amendment to our proposed permanent regulations, we will consider those. And if there are any changes, then there would be additional 15 days comment period. So the idea of rulemaking process is the community engagement. So that will be there, that's where we'll get feedback from you, and then we can address those questions or feedback if we can do that under the law. Operational requirement is for manufacturing, good manufacturing, because what we are trying to do is that when a manufactured product comes out in the market, it is safe for the consumer, and consumer is aware of it, what this product is. So to produce a safe product, good manufacturing practices is, we will be requiring each permanent licensee to have standard operating procedures, not only written and put on the shelf, but implement those standard operating procedures. And through our inspections, we'll be verifying that those procedures are being implemented. The goal is to get the cannabis products are manufactured in a safe way. There's no contamination, there's no allergens, and the consumer knows that what these products are. There's additional requirement for extraction system because there's a concern, and we are fully aware of that, and we are addressing that concern about the closed loop system extraction. They need to meet all the local requirements of fire code, CalOSHA requirements, but we are also requiring that closed loop system must be inspected and certified by a licensed engineer. Product standards. We are not going to allow additional adding alcohol or nicotine in the product or caffeine, but if naturally occurring caffeine is already present, for example, tea and caffeine, those can be infused, but no energy drinks. That's what the goal is. Perishable products, we are not going to allow that. Any product which will require storage at or below 41 degrees Fahrenheit. No dairy products. Again, they come in perishable commodity, and the law doesn't allow actually dairy product. One exception is going to be that you can buy a commercially available butter and then you can infuse that butter. And other exception would be that you can use dairy products, for example, milk and eggs and butter in your recipes, but not as a final product. You can, as an ingredient, you can use those. No seafood and no low acid. You can tell from these notes that consumer protection is the one which we are trying to address through our regulations. Edible products, there's a limit on THC, and the law puts a limit 10 milligrams each serving for both medicinal and adult use. But we have additional requirement for edibles. If there are multiple servings in a package, the package should not exceed 100 milligrams. Even if it's the one serving, the total content of THC in the package for both medicinal and adult use for edibles should not exceed 100 milligrams. Other products which are not edible, and for example, vape cartridge and capsules, suppositories, we have two standards requirement. For adult use, they should not exceed 1,000 milligram. But for medicinal, because there may be a higher dose need for the medicinal purposes, so we have a higher threshold for that. That's the 2,000 milligrams. Packaging, again, we want to protect the consumer. We want to protect children. We want to protect unintentional use of the this product. So the cannabis packaging should not resemble with the existing food-like packaging. For example, it should not have a Hershey type of picture on the package because that will be attractive to children. We want to protect the children. And if there are multiple servings in the package, it must be resealable. And it should be child resistant. And there should be tamper evidence. For example, if you buy your medicine or any other product, you will see you open your lid and then there is a seal on it that tells you that this product has not been tampered before. So that will be our requirement as well. So there's no contamination or adulteration done. Labeling is important because that's the first interaction which consumer is going to have with the product, that what this product is and what does it contain. That's why the primary panel should have all the information about THC and ingredients on it. But there could be supplemental label, which would be more informational label, which would have warning statements that could be on the package. But if the package is small because of the various products, you could include the supplemental label with the package as an insert. Also on the package, for the medicinal purposes, it should say medicinal use only. For adult, there's no requirement for if it's for medicinal, it's M type, it must say it's medicinal use only. It should not resemble, it should not say candy, it should not resemble with any other product which is available, should not have cartoons. I have been asked, what does mean? Who is going to qualify? What is a cartoon? What's not a cartoon? We all know what cartoon is, what children will be attracted to. So we are trying to protect children so they are not attracted to that product. So the cartoon caricatures which you see on TV, which are in various ways used, so we are not going to allow that. There are two categories which Lori and Richard mentioned, M type and A type. A licensee can have one ownership, could have both M and A license type category. They can do both medicinal and adult use at the same facility, but they have to keep the separate track for the permanent license, because it will start from the cultivation and they need to keep track of A separate than M separate. For example, if you are a manufacturer, you can run your medicinal batch first, and if you want to run your adult batch, then you run your adult batch, and then you keep track those separately. For existing inventory which you have, the requirement is that it should be packed in a secondary package if you don't have a primary package which meets all our requirement for resealable and child resistant, so it must be in a secondary package, and it must show the THC level, and also it should have the mandatory warning which is in the statutes. However, manufacturers are required on January 1 and after January 1 that they need to meet all the requirements, not only for the packaging and labeling, but also the product standards as well, before they can send it for the distribution. We are issuing 4 types of license. Type 7 is for volatile extraction. Type 6 is non-volatile or mechanical extraction. Type N is for those people who are not doing any extraction, but they are using concentrate and oils to make edibles or any other product. And type P license is when a licensee is doing a third-party packaging and labeling. The question has been asked for type 7 or type 6, do they need to have all these 4 licenses if a manufacturer is doing extraction and infusion and they are doing their own packaging? No, you don't. Type 7 can do type 6, type N, and type P, and type 6 can do N and P. So, and type N can do also packaging as well of their product. But type P can do only packaging and labeling. That's how these work. Temporary license, we are receiving applications. We started receiving application December 8th, and we are issuing license as soon we verify that the application is complete and it does have the local authorization which is required for temporary license. And we do verify local authorization by contacting local issuing authority, and there's a 10-day period which we have to use that. A temporary license are valid only for 120 days, and to get an annual license, one has to apply before the temporary license will expire. For annual license, our requirements are more extensive than the temporary license. Temporary license, we kept it very simple, and it's a one-page license application. You can fill that in and send it to us. But for annual license, there would be owner life scans, which will be required for background check, and we will require standard operating procedure, inventory control, what kind of products you are making. There would be additional requirement, landowner or the property owner's agreement, and also we will require that you send us the map of your facility, your security requirements, your safety standards which you are going to apply. So there would be a whole lot of more information. So that will be on our webpage in more detail. Local authorization, we three mentioned, and I have a slide for that because that's important, that for temporary license, you need to have a local authorization. The question was asked, and it has been asked to me before, what does local authorization look? So we are going to leave it to the local authorization authority. What we need is that it has to be very specific, that the applicant is authorized to conduct a commercial cannabis activity to manufacture at this premises. And there's a contact information for the local, so we can contact them and verify whether this authorization is valid or not valid. Our compliance approach has been, and it will be for first year, is outreach and education. Both, three of us actually in 16, we did a listening session, then we did pre-regulation session, then we did, when we issued medical regulation, we did post-medical regulation, we did events recently in LA, Riverside, and Cannabis. So we have been out there to educate the industry. And even now, we are doing, after emergency regulation, we are going out, doing workshops. My department has done 9 workshops already. We'll be doing 10. But after licensing, after January 1, we will be doing more focused outreach and education as well. Our goal is to get you in the compliance, get you in a regulatory market, because your success is going to be our success. And that's why we are going out and educating you what the requirements are, what kind of documents you need to apply for a license, what would be the requirements to comply with all the regulations. So that has been our approach. However, we will have our enforcement authority, which is very explicit in the law. And if there are any issues with any entity, definitely we will take enforcement actions. But we will work with the licensees to bring them into compliance. We will be doing webinars, as well as we will have guidance documents on our webpage, so you can look at those, and we will have compliance inspection up and down the state. All the inspections will be done by the state staff. We are not planning at this point to delegate authority at the local level. Readiness and roadmap. I covered most of it, because when you start a new venture, when you are given both, Lori and myself, we came on board in 2016, Richard came this year. So you are given a task, here's the law, and go and implement it. And there's no infrastructure, there's no procedures, there's no policies, there's no information, the scope of the industry. So we had to do a lot of work to get ready. But you can see that we have issued our licenses. We have started issuing license. We have hired good staff. They are trained. We are ready, and we are accepting application and issuing license. And we will be releasing our permanent regulations early next year. So it has been a long journey, but we are there where we wanted to be at this time of the year. And it's a success we should all celebrate. And thank you so much.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we have about maybe 40 minutes or so for question and answers. You know, you can ask questions of any three of the panelists. I really appreciate Dr. Mann, Lori AJAX, and Richard Parrott for being here. They are the parties that can answer your questions relative to the state's regulations. And once again, I'm really pleased that they're here. Make sure that you also fill out your survey or your evaluation form, because that will help inform us when we prepare for our next Cannabis Summit later next year, in the summer. I will start off with a couple of questions. Since I'm moderating this, I take that prerogative. And I'm going to direct my initial two questions at Dr. Mann before I ask some more general questions of all three panelists. Now, in Alameda County, we have the director of our environmental health department over there. And what we have said is if someone wants to produce, manufacture edibles, it needs to be in a certified kitchen. What's the position of public health on that matter?
You might have noticed in our emergency regulation, we have a placeholder for type S license, and type S license, which we are looking at, is that will be a common use facility license. We have been in touch with City of Oakland, also finding out what their approach is, and we are also talking with other local authorizations to gain more knowledge and developing a regulatory framework for that. And there would be a second set of emergency regulation which will elaborate what the type S, or common use facility requirements, are going to be.
Yeah, because I think our environmental health department didn't want to have any contamination of cannabis products with products that, the consumer, so they wanted to have a separate kitchen if you're going to manufacture edibles.
Yeah.
So
one point I must make, that all manufacturing licensees will be doing only cannabis activities. They will not be allowed to do the other kind of food in their facility.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And then I think it's an obvious question, but let me ask it anyway. The products that are going to be provided to the consumer, will I be able to buy those products as an adult in Safeway or at the corner grocery store or at the gas station, convenience store? Where will these products be available?
These products will be available at a licensed retail store.
So these products will only be available at the retail store that's been licensed. Yeah. Okay. So as a consumer, if I'm John Q. Citizen, I go into Safeway, I can't expect to find any cannabis products in Safeway. I'd have to go to a licensed retail outlet to get that product.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. All right.
First off, I want to thank you guys everyone for putting this on. It's very informative, and as we all know, knowledge is power, so very much appreciate it. I'm Dr. Robbie Flannery. I'm the founder and CEO of Doc Rob Farms. I'm also the sitting chair for the Agriculture Committee for the California Cannabis Industry Association. I have a question for Dr. Mann. You had mentioned that for edibles, you have a limit for 100 milligrams of THC, and then you said there are other products where you have 1,000 milligram limit. And you had mentioned, I believe, capsules and tablets fall under that. So capsules and tablets are not considered edibles at this point.
That's correct.
So what is the definition of an edible then, just to clarify? Because we're coming up with a tablet, and this is very good information to know.
The other definition would be if you're making cookies, if you're making brownies, if you're making any other product which will be consumed and decarbonated, that's that kind of product.
Okay.
We debated on that. We looked at other states, and then we made a determination, because capsules will not be edible in that category.
Even though you're orally consuming them?
Yeah, it's oral, yes. Yeah.
Okay, and so tablets that have like a sugar coating, just give a little bit of flavor, things like that are not considered an edible?
No.
Thank you. That's all I have. Appreciate it.
Hi, thank you for doing this presentation. My name is Sue Lim.
Oh, you might get.
My name is Sue Lim. I'm an environmental scientist. One of the early slides, Dr. Mann, says it's not a food, it's not a drug. So I'm wondering what kind of standards are going to be used for both the consumer end, for safety and efficacy, and also for the environmental regulatory end in terms of manufacturing products that will be at hazardous waste or will be disposed into the local sewer system. So where are those standards? How are they going to be developed? And what is the source that's going to be used to draw those standards?
That's a very good question. It's not that I said that it's neither food nor drug. It is defined in the law. That's how it is. And where did the standard came from? We actually looked at similar products, which would be food and drug. And FDA regulation, we have food and drug branch within our center in Department of Public Health, and we looked at their standards. We also looked at other states who have already have similar programs like Colorado, Washington, and Oregon, and learned from them what has worked for them, what has not worked for them.
Okay, so standards I'm meaning is for analytical standards. What are the regulatory analytical standards for each of the 87 different types of pesticides? You know, what is the regulatory standards for moisture contact? What is the regulatory standards? What are the testing standards that are going to be used for pathogens, molds, herbicides?
So the Bureau developed, our scientists developed it along with obviously talking to a lot of the laboratories in the other states. That is all outlined in our regulations, all of the different testing standards.
Oh, right. And those are available on your website?
They absolutely are. It's a lot. So,
thank you.
Hi, Nara Dalbaka. I'm going to, it's told one question, so I'm going
Well, you
to
can
pick my most important question.
I'm running this. I run this.
I know.
Yeah. So you ask your questions.
Scary,
If I think you need to be cut off, I'll cut you off.
Okay, thank you.
I'm running this.
Thank you, sir.
Make that very clear to you.
Okay.
And everybody out here.
All right,
Okay?
So self-distribution, if a manufacturer gets a self-distribution, is that the transport license? And then that would mean that they could not take it to retail. So if a manufacturer or cultivator wanted to self-distribute to the retail location, they would need to apply for the full distribution license. Is that the?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Anything else?
I do. There are limits on the THC but I haven't seen printed anywhere if there's a limit on the CBD content.
We are getting a lot of questions on that, and we are thinking.
I think
about
that was
it.
one of those was me last week. So okay. And then the UID is not required on packaging until
Yes,
the
it does.
track and trace.
I should have mentioned UID is required on the package.
Is required, and that's after track and trace is implemented, or how do they get a UID before track and trace?
Track and trace is implemented because UID is going to be linked with the track and trace system.
So not until track and trace.
Correct.
Okay.
Track and trace will be up and running in January, but the temporary licensees won't be using it. But when the person gets their annual license and then they're trained on track and trace and they get their UIDs, they will be affixing those to products and packages.
All right. If I have one more.
Okay.
Okay. I'm so sorry.
But no, these are good questions. Go ahead.
Okay. So on testing for an edible product, if somebody is testing the distillate that they're using and it's the same distillate and they're putting the same amount in each final product, are they going to need to test on the distillate and then also on the final product for homogenization? Or if they say this is how much distillate we're using and this is how it homogenizes and this is the testing, or will they need to do a second round of testing on final product?
That would be a great question for our scientists. So if you can give me your card, I could have them contact you.
That would be fabulous. Thank you. And
how y'all doing today? Good. Name is Hakeem, and got a couple questions. Native is all right with you since you're running the show.
I am. All right. If I think you're going too long, I'll cut you off. Don't worry.
Do all of the 4 micro business activities covered under the micro business license have to be conducted at one location? Can we have each activity at different locations if we have local approval for each?
No, all under a microbusiness, any of the 4 activities all have to happen at the same location. You can get multiple microbusiness licenses, but all the 3 or the 4 activities have to be at the same location.
Okay, I've been researching this information, listening to you people and things y'all wrote and everything. And my family, or the women in my family, have been running a little collective in the Pittsburgh, Antioch Bay Area. And they have the state license, the 420, Senate Bill 420 from the Secretary of State, and they've been paying their taxes. So all the hoopla about we're not going to put the little people out, well, it's out. It was absolutely shut down because based on what's opening up here, Berkeley's going to be the closest point. If you live in Concord, Antioch, Pittsburgh, Bay Point, from back, I know it's local. And I've been to their meetings and stuff, but they haven't even figured out where they're zoned. So it's sort of like a public health outcry here because the people that use this for medicinal purposes, they can't get it because we're shut down. Now, before Initiative 64 went on, everybody's operating fine. There's no problem. And now as soon as the new law come in, and I haven't heard anything or one mention of what you're going to do about the little guy that's been doing this. Because they don't got $25,000 for license, non-refundable. They don't have any of that. They in one area. So I haven't heard anybody speak to that really. And then, of course, we got the minority equity thing going. And I don't want to sound too harsh, but, you know, we always seem to get left out when things are going down like that. And it's always a challenge for us. And that's just the truth. And so I'm just trying to figure out what are you going to do about the little people? Are they just out of business now? It's like taking little supermarkets on the corner and you just say, hey, you guys can operate no more because we got Walmarts. And that's what's happening.
Yeah, I think they got the question, so.
Okay. Nate's right. And so you guys need to, you know, you not trying to make it an issue, but that's what's going on. I'm in the business. I do it every day. Y'all just come aboard. I've been living my life like this. And some of the things you got right, but a lot of them things you ain't looking out for little people.
Let's see if there's a response.
Okay, let's see the response.
So we are, of course, we don't want the little businesses to go away. So we feel like, you know, we want to balance, you know, there should be opportunities for small, medium, large businesses. So when we developed our regulations, the intent was we did a lot of stakeholder outreach and trying to strike that balance. I'm going to tell you, you're going to probably come back during the public comment period during regular rulemaking and say, hey, this is not working for small business, or we can't, you know, we're not going to be able to comply with this. And so I think from the state perspective, we're going to continue to work with the locals because they're our partner in this. We're going to continue to work with the industry to make sure we are getting that balance, that we are, you know, making sure that the small businesses aren't going by the wayside, because that is not what we want. A lot of the small businesses is what started a lot of this in the first place, and we do understand that. So I'm going to tell you, you're going to have to keep. Hopefully you're going to be at our public comment hearings, because this is January 1 is just the beginning. We had to get our regulations in place. You're going to see early on in 2018 a more robust public comment process. And so we're going to have to just, I think, sit down and try to do what we can. The Bureau also has a cannabis advisory committee, and one of their main roles is going to be looking at some of these equity issues, advising us on how we can improve our regulations.
Until then, we're just closed down.
Well, I would still encourage you to apply for the temporary, see if we can see whether or not you have local approval, see what licenses are available. If it's not the micro business, then maybe you can get separate licenses. And so we're happy to have those conversations. You can email us, you can call us, just to see how you can fit into the current structure.
Last question. Mm-hmm. Last question. Go ahead.
So actually, you don't have no program for the existing little businesses. You don't have nothing going on for them.
Well, we don't know what every little business, how they're operating. So it really depends on the activity they're conducting and where they're conducting it.
Okay, thank you.
And where's the business? Excuse me. Where's your?
It's in Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh. Okay, so that's Contra Costa County, right? Right. So
it's a different county, but
yeah,
they the state people.
right.
So
I understand. Because once again, I think a lot too, as Lori pointed out, depends on the locale. So you've got cities,
like that.
Yeah, and you got counties. And I know in Alameda County, we're very conscious of what you're talking about. Very conscious of that.
Oakland always been marijuana friendly.
Yeah.
It's just that the other places, they were marijuana friendly until all this came about. Now all of a sudden, we're banning everything because we don't got stuff.
I think you got to make that take. Obviously the state has some consciousness around that, but you need to drive that agenda home with your locales as well, because locales have they have discretion. And And if a locale decides they don't want to have it, then they're not going to have it. So you've got to drive that agenda home with your with your cities and with your counties. That's really important, because the state might come up with programs and a certain city or a certain county might say they don't want to have anything to do with it, and that's that.
Well, that's what they've been doing. We've been in contact with the supervisors over there. We've been at the city council meetings, and we've been, giving them our plea. Hey, look, we're small people here, and there's, based on the rules and regulation, everything got going, there's no room here, So I'm just trying to figure out what's going on.
Well, talk with my office. Let's see how we can help you out, because I know some of the supervisors in Contra Costa County. Right? Okay. All right. Dale.
Yes, Dale Geringer with CalNormal again. A question about Prop 65. As you know, Prop 65 is the initiative that requires posted warnings on premises where you might be exposed to substances known to the state of California to be either carcinogens or mutagens, or also if you're selling such products. Now, it's been determined by the OEHA, Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, is in charge of scheduling things, and they have determined that marijuana smoke in particular is a carcinogen. Therefore, people selling marijuana flower are liable for posting Prop 65 warnings on the premise. A lot of people are totally unaware of this, but there are law firms, bounty hunters, that are going around the state making buys at stores where there are no Prop 65 warnings. Then they file complaints, which can cost literally hundreds of thousands of dollars to settle. And then the complaining bounty hunters get a share of the proceeds. So also, there are some other substances in cannabis that may or may not be subject to Prop 65 warnings, including myrcene and some heavy metals. And that hasn't been really settled as to whether you need warnings about those. In fact, my question is, can something be done to settle what kinds of Prop 65 warnings are required by whom in this industry? And can you folks do something to make sure that your licensees are informed of their responsibilities under Prop 65?
So we've been getting a lot of information about what's happening with the Prop 65. Although we can't change that, we are working on a plan to educate those licensees that are going to be required to post warning signs and have that available on our website.
And to determine exactly what substances people have to be warned of or what the warning signs look like, I don't know that that's been settled yet.
Yeah, that's not really our jurisdiction, but at least providing what the signage looks like, who would be required to comply with that signage.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lillian. I just had some questions about the edibles, strength and packaging. I've heard today for the first time that edibles, both medical and recreational, are going to have to be both 100 milligrams tops, no matter what.
That's correct.
Are there regulations about the packaging of them in terms of 10 milligram dosage, or can it be a single 100 milligram brownie with no 10 milligram dosaging on it?
All edible products, if they are more than one serving, they need to be delineated. They need to have a clear marking.
On the product, or can it be on the packaging?
On the product.
On the product. So if I had a brownie that was 100 milligrams, it would have to be clearly delineated into 10 pieces.
Good morning to all. My name is Elsa Casanova, and I am on staff with La Familia, and I act as the coordinator for Ashland Cherryland Together, which is a drug-free communities coalition. This question is primarily for Dr. Mann. So we are aware of the Let's Talk Cannabis campaign that the California State Public Health Department is putting out. And my question is, are there any funds that are going to be coming down from the state for local jurisdictions to push out their own education and awareness efforts? And if so, when are those funds going to become available?
There's an afternoon panel, and my assistant director is on the panel, and she is spearheading the Let's Talk Cannabis.
Excellent.
She may be able to answer that question.
Excellent.
I'm
Thank
not
you.
sure whether she will, but she will be able to.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Lindsay White with Roggaway Law Group. My question is pretty specific. I want to know if you have a specific definition of what a premises will be, because I understand that for a micro business, you have to have all of the uses under in the same building or same space. But when you have multiple licenses for that don't qualify for a micro business, the regulations state that they must be separate and distinct premises. And so I reached out to the Bureau a couple weeks ago, and they said that will be determined on a case-by-case basis. So at this point, it's just hard to determine whether that means each license will have to be split in the building, if there have to be walls down the middle of the building and different entrances and exits to each licensed premise, or if they can all be within one space in the building.
So yeah, we're going to be looking, so we define premises in our regulations, but when it comes to whether it's a micro business or whether we have, not everybody, somebody could get a manufacturing, a cultivation, and a retail license. What that's going to look like is really going to depend when we get those applications and we look at the diagram and then determine, what can be all housed under one footprint, or are we going to require some kind of delineation?
Okay. Do you have any
for like the micro business, obviously your cultivation is going to be separated from the retail premises, and what that looks like. So, we're just, we're getting licenses out. We're getting barrage right now. We have tons. So I think it's us getting into that routine of looking at it, because everybody has a different business operation. And I think once we sort of start making all those decisions, I think we'll have that available for people, so it gives you a better idea, because I know it's really hard right now, but we're also working with 2 other licensing authorities, so we want to make sure what we're approving is going to be okay for if Richard's doing cultivation and we have the same licensees on the same parcel. So for the most part, what we've been saying, if you have different activities, they could be on the same property, they just may have to be somehow delineated, and I think that really depends on the activity.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Anthony Douglas. Thank you guys very much for having this meeting. I know everybody here has gotten a lot of useful information out of this. I have a couple questions. My first question would be for you, Dr. Mann. If we have a volatile license, are we able to do non-volatile in the same facility?
Yes.
And will we have to have a non-volatile license as well?
If you are doing volatile extraction and you also are doing other which is non-volatile, maybe mechanical or using non-volatile solvents, you just need one license, which would be type 7 license.
Got you. Thank you. Yeah. My next question would be, is under a micro business, that allows us to have 4 different licenses, correct?
It's one license in 4 different activities, and you have to be in compliance with each one.
Got you. And is that restricted to name or business, like owner's name or business?
I'm not sure what you mean by that question.
When we apply, and let's say company A applies and gets approved, and we obtain the license from the state, then are we restricted to those 4 by the owners of the company, or are we restricted to those 4 by the company?
So in order to qualify for a microbusiness, whoever's getting the license would have to apply with us. They'd get the license. So you're restricted for that premises. You don't have to do all 4. You could do 3 of the 4. But if you wanted to have another microbusiness somewhere else, you could get another one and conduct that activity. 3 of the 4 activities. Does that answer your question?
Very much so. Now, are we able to, for those of us who have partners, are we able to put multiple names on the licenses?
Yes.
Gotcha.
You have to disclose them. And if they're owners, they would have to have a background check.
Got you. And I know this doesn't pertain to this county, but it's been a long time question that has cost me a lot of money and time, and I directed to you, Mr. Parrott. What is going on with, or are you able to answer as far as what's going on with cultivation license in San Joaquin County?
I don't have any information on that today. If you want to send me an email, I'm not sure if you have specific questions, but I don't have any information.
Got you.
Yeah.
Got you. Well, thank you guys very much for your time. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks.
Hi, I have a new question, and then I'm going to revisit my old question. So my new question is more about the consumers, those folks who aren't really trying to getting involved in the business aspect as far as the transactions, but they are going to take advantage of Prop 64 and their ability to do home growing. Now, my question about that is, I'm allowed to have 6 plants. Am I also allowed to then transfer those plants into an infused product or like a mechanical, whatever breakdown? Like, what am I allowed to do? Am I just allowed to grow, or am I allowed to like maneuver the plant once it's grown inside my home?
Yeah, I'm only aware that you're allowed to grow it. I don't know that you're allowed to. You mean to manufacture the product into something? We're not sure. That's not under our jurisdiction.
Whose jurisdiction?
It'd be the local jurisdiction.
Okay. And then my other question is kind of regards to Prop like 215 things. So for the prices, even now, and some people expect the prices to rise in California, although in the block, there's two things. To stay focused on this question, if I was like a low-income consumer and I wanted to take advantage of cooperatively organizing, rights do I have? Am I able to, let's say there's a community of folks and we're allowed to grow the 6 plants and no one has money for like going to a dispensary retail center or something like that. And so people grow different things. Someone knows how to, are we still allowed to then show up to a place and like trade our products, but there's no money being transferred?
So the collectives are still into effect, as was said earlier, for up to a year after the licensing authorities announce that they're accepting application. So the collectives, we're not going to be licensing collectives as long as they're following the guidelines under the Health and Safety Code and the Attorney General guidelines. So if you're still operating as a collective under those guidelines, you can continue doing so for the next year.
Okay, so my next question is, so I tend to think that the folks that are broke right now will still be broke 10 years from now, if not more disparately. So 10 years from now, licenses are out. Are the broke people allowed to organize their growing and wellness efforts?
So after next year, then any collective would have to then somehow become licensed by the state, whether they change their business structures. They could still operate as a nonprofit. They would just have to change their business structure and then get licensed, obviously be locally approved and then get a license with the state.
Okay, and back to my first question, which was about events. So right now, as I know, as in the nonprofit space, throwing events, if I were to throw an event and it was public and I was going to have alcohol there, I need to go and get a temporary day of license permit. If it's private, meaning it's at my home or a privately owned property of my friend or an office, and it's a closed guest list, I can serve alcohol without a license. What is the relationship between that current regulation to the question I asked earlier as to, in a private residence, can 100 of my closest friends come together to celebrate in community?
I think it's just going to depend on what activities happening in that private residence.
There'll be weed smoking and eating of the weed and maybe some topical salve putting on.
So if it doesn't fall under commercial cannabis activity, then you wouldn't need a state license. But if it was, there's some kind of retail sales or something, then it may require some kind of license.
So as I understand, as long as you're consenting adults, you can smoke your cannabis on your private property and have your party and I don't think there's any violation. You can even have alcohol there. But if it becomes an issue with the local jurisdiction,
Supervisor.
if it becomes an issue with the local jurisdiction, because there are a lot of different laws, then you could have some concerns.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi again. I have one new question, and I want to touch back on something that we had brought up earlier. Under the microbusiness distributorship, will a microbusiness distributorship be considered a full distributorship where they can conduct business with other licensees outside of their own microbusiness?
Yeah, they can either choose to distribute their own product or they could distribute other people's product.
Or both?
They choose.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then touching back on what we were talking about on the concentrate, bulk, white label wholesale, that really is a large share of a lot of the largest retail locations concentrate business. It kind of hits the price point of that, $15 to $40 gram, which appeals to a lower income clientele or a lower income client base. So, a lot of these retailers are bulk purchasing, 5, 10, 15 pounds to accommodate of varying different products to accommodate for that lower end clientele. Now, and the reason they're able to afford it at that lower end is because with it coming directly from the manufacturer, now obviously through a distributor, because of those bulk purchase prices, the manufacturer is able to accommodate lower bulk prices, which they can in turn pass on. So is there going to be some sort of, and I know you said for me to give your office a call, but is there going to be some sort of something that we can work out where, it can be transferred from a manufacturer to a distributor to a retail location or to a retail location's distributor that they can then package it in bulk so they can still achieve that price point? I think that.
So after the transition period, other than the transition for loose flower to be packaged, the retailer will not be able to package manufactured goods. That'll have to happen at the manufacturing facility.
Understood. So would a manufacturer be able to transfer? So all packaging has to be done at the manufacturing facility. It can't be done at a separate packaging location under a separate license?
Unless they get the packaging license
Unless they get the packaging license.
So there is going to be a way around where a retailer could still do these bulk buys as long as there was a packager in between to achieve the price point to appeal to the lower income clientele. Because I think where the disconnect here is that you guys may just not be aware of how large of a market that is.
So in order for the testing to take place, it has to be in its final form. So if it's, and I'll have to talk with public health, if after it's been tested in its final form, it'd have to be packaged, it can't go back to bulk. If it's, do you see what I'm saying?
No, I got what you're saying, but basically it can come from the manufacturer, get tested in bulk, then go to the packager, be tested again, and then go to the retailer. It's just to meet you see where I'm getting at here? Kind of a workaround of sorts?
It's the final product which is ready for retail that needs to be tested.
Understood.
Yeah.
So whatever happens before that, however it works, just as long as it's done following the the steps.
Yes, so once it's in its final form and tested, then the distributor has to distribute that to the retailer, is what I'm saying. It can't be tested in bulk, then go backwards, and then it would have to be tested again in final form at that point. That's
okay, understood.
I know, it gets a little.
Okay, so we have about 5 more minutes for questions.
Hi, my name is Tony Rossi. I'm a student that works with the Community Health Education Initiative of Pauline Bondano. We work with the Alameda County Tobacco Control Coalition. And my question is about the the UID. So once it's sold, how is it going to be tracked? So say, and who will lose their license or be fined? What will happen? So say, any adult can come in with a driver's license and our numbers will be written down? And then once you leave, the product will be resold possibly to minors. How would the investigation or what? How is that going to be handled? Or how will it work with the UID?
Every throughout the supply chain, they're going to have that unique identifier. So for any product, that's going to occur all the way to retailer. And so we will be checking our retailer to make sure that all of the products that they have in stock do match up in track and trace. So it all should be entered into the track and trace system. So there shouldn't be any product that's not in the track and trace system, except for during that temporary licensing period. They're just going to have to keep track of their inventory on paper, invoices and whatnot until they get that training and get that product into track and trace. And then once it leaves to the consumer, it'll, unfortunately, if they throw away that packaging, we won't necessarily be able to trace it back. But if we still have that packaging, we could trace it back if we find out, if something was sold to a minor or there's some kind of public health outbreak. But we will be checking in on the retailers, and the statute allows us, similar to alcohol, to do minor decoy operations, similar to what you see with alcohol licensees.
So is there already a fine or lose license kind of thing?
Yeah, so in our regulations, we outline all the possible violations that can occur for all of our licensees, and then we've also have either the associated fine or penalty suspension for that violation, and we have it tiered, different tiers of violations based on the seriousness of it.
Thank you very much.
And I think this is a good question to ask since this one came up. So just like with alcohol, there are grants from the state for local jurisdictions to work on enforcement. Will there be any opportunities for local jurisdictions? Like I know our Sheriff's Department has a grant with ABC to work on enforcement. Because I think that's an important thing, because I like to say if we didn't have law enforcement telling us not to drive fast on the roadways, we drive fast. So we do need, we do need that enforcement component to try to make sure people comply. And even then, everyone's not going to comply. So will there be any grants?
There is outlined in the statute some grants for the locals. I think that's going to come after we start taking in enforcement fines and taxation, and I believe some of those grants are limited to those counties that are currently allowing some commercial cannabis activity.
My name is Robert Raich. I have a question seeking a clarification on one issue. Ms. AJAX, I was very gratified to something you pointed out about 5 minutes ago, that under the Health and Safety Code, collectives still are legal under California law, have been for years, and continue to be at least until December of 2018. However, also, one of the very first points in your PowerPoint slide was everybody needs to have a state license starting January 1st. On the other hand, we all know how difficult it is to get local authorizations in certain cities and counties all around the state, which is a prerequisite in order to obtain the temporary state license. I'm concerned that all three of you say you're imposing new enforcement operations that will be enforcing the various laws that you have. However, will you be instructing your enforcement people to exercise some kinds of discretion with respect to people who are continuing to operate at least through November of 2018 as collectives who are limiting their operations simply to medical patients who are also members of their own collective?
So yes, I mean, our enforcement staff, so they're going to be obviously trained on what commercial cannabis activities considered, who needs to be licensed, and making sure they understand the collectives that are still operating under the Health and Safety Code and the Attorney General guidelines have that period to operate through December. I think it's December 8th, but don't quote me. So, I think you're going to see our focus in the beginning is not just educating our enforcement staff, but educating our licensees, our potential applicants, folks that don't quite know whether they should have a license or not have a license, and a lot of communicating with the locals. I think we are here at this point because of our collaboration with the local jurisdictions, with the industry, and as Dr. MANN mentioned, we did a tremendous amount of public outreach throughout this process, and we are all very open-minded people that want to, we get that there's probably going to be some things in our regulations that aren't going to work, and that we've got to keep listening and be nimble, and if things aren't working, listen and make those adjustments as necessary. So I think you're going to see that continued collaboration for a long time.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Okay, our last two questions.
Am I allowed to ask you a question?
Of course.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So my understanding is that Alameda County, you can only do, you're doing a pilot program right now for medical cannabis growth, but that you are not allowing recreational growing of cannabis. Do you have plans to change that in the near future?
We just took that matter up yesterday at the Board of Supervisors,
Apologies
and we
for
passed
not
a
being up to date.
resolution in support of adult use for our two existing dispensaries, and then we directed our staff to go back and begin to craft an ordinance or ordinances associated with adult use for other types of categories and other types of applicants that will be coming forward. And we hope to have that before the Board of Supervisors around about March. But
Awesome.
right now, we've approved it for our two existing dispensaries.
Thank you so much. And then for Mr. Pro, maybe this should go to the water board instead, but for water rights registration, what level of category needs to apply to that? Is that from specialty cottage growers all the way to nursery, or does it just matter on where they're located and how much water they're appropriating?
I do think that'd be a question for the water board. And if you want to, if you want to contact us and send that to us, we can help facilitate that over to them.
Great.
Okay. Yep.
Say the best for last. This question is, my name is Ryan, by the way. I'm Ryan Agbow. I'm one of the founders of Alameda for Safe Cannabis Access. And the question's for Dr. Mann. Earlier you mentioned, actually there was a little bit of a conversation about commercial kitchen requirements. I just wanted to clarify, if a manufacturer wanted to do edibles or any kind of infused products, are they required to build out a commercial kitchen within their manufacturing site?
As I mentioned, we are working on developing the regulation language for that. I don't have an answer for you. We are just wait for our regulation language when it comes out.
Okay, so as of right now, if we were to apply for a manufacturing license and we intended to do infused products, would it be something that we need to keep in mind?
If you are doing infused product and you are doing it in your own facility and premises, and you are the owner or ownership, and you have local authorization, you can apply for Type N license.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I want to thank all of you for all of those very good questions. I want to thank Lori AJAX, Dr. Mann, and Richard PARROTT for being here this morning. It took my office quite a while to set this up, because we were planning this since May or thereabouts, but to try to get everybody's schedule and to make it happen. Finally, we were able to do this on December 20th, but it happened, and I really appreciate the fact that the three of them are here, and my staff for helping to organize this, and all of you for being out this morning. Now, we will reconvene this afternoon. This afternoon at 1:30, we'll be looking at awareness and education. We'll be focusing on adult, youth, and the broader public. Nancy O'Malley, the district attorney, will be speaking. Susan Fennell from the California Department of Public Health. Dr. Mann spoke. She will be here. Chris Hauser, who's a Colorado attorney, will be here to speak as well. And Robert Rage and Susan Fennelly will be a panelist, along with Dale Geringer, and we have Jennifer Ellis, who's a prevention specialist, will be speaking as well. So I think the afternoon will be very informative, because as has been pointed out, we are very concerned about this product getting in the hands of young people. We want to discourage that. We want to not incentivize that. We want to disincentivize that. And that's really the focus of this afternoon's convening. And once again, please fill out your survey forms or evaluation forms before you leave. You can come back. I don't think there's going to be an issue of having sufficient seating here in the chamber. Those of you who are listening, either through the live stream or the webcast, tune back in around 1:30. And once again, let's give our panelists a big round of applause.
If I may say, thanks for organizing, and your staff was wonderful. Patricia is great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Please leave the chamber through the back doors. And if you would like to have copies of the slides, you can come up to where I'm sitting, and you can go ahead and fill out your email address. Thank you.
And then get. Okay. We have lunch.